Hi, well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Leading with Ted. This is the podcast where we explore the leadership wisdom of the one and only Ted Lasso. And we're your hosts, it's Chris Baker and Al Rattan. And today we are diving deep into the world of trust and transparency.
Hmm.
We're going to uncover how Ted Lasso builds trust through open communication, honesty, and transparency, and how this foundation plays a pivotal role in creating a strong and united team. So grab your biscuits, folks, and let's get started. To kick things off, let's talk about our first teaching point. We've got 6 teaching points, as usual. And teaching point number 1 is be vulnerable and relatable. And Ted Lasso is a master at being vulnerable and relatable. He doesn't pretend to have all the answers, and he's not afraid to admit when he's uncertain. And it's this vulnerability that makes him more relatable to his team, and it shows them that he's human, just like everyone else. When leaders are vulnerable, it opens the door for trust to flourish.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, these are great points. We'll just talk about one scene, Alan, and then we'll get your sort of take on this. And one memorable scene that illustrates this is when Ted admits that he doesn't know the rules of soccer, or football, as we call it in the UK. By embracing his ignorance and seeking help, he endears himself to the team and the audience. This vulnerability is a powerful tool for leaders looking to build trust.
Yeah.
So why is it so hard?
So it's so good, Chris, because immediately when you say this, I think back to, and Chris and I facilitate a program for a national company up here in Canada that we created for them. And, one lane is sales, developing their sales people, and the other lane is developing the leaders. And in the leaders work, one of the leaders courses, we talk about sort of the ability to express vulnerability with your team. And what's the first thing that comes up when you bring up being vulnerable with a group of leaders? They think it's a weakness.
It's fear. Yeah.
Fear. They
Yeah.
think it's weakness. I can't show
Yeah.
vulnerability amongst my team. But my goodness, and this is speaking from past experience, folks, where I've done this. I've expressed vulnerability with my team, and you would not believe, A, the support you get,
Yeah.
but B, the culture that it builds within your organization, just by saying, hey, you know what? I don't have all the answers. I don't
Right.
know how to do this. I made a mistake here. I'm really sorry. And when so many leaders are so fearful of showing any type of weakness, and that's really, it stems to an insecurity, right? If you're a leader, you're in the role for a reason. So,
Yeah.
and here's another thing, and your team knows that you don't know all the answers.
Correct. Yeah. So if you're giving them the story that you, or the image that you do know everything, even though they know damn well that you don't,
Yeah.
you're losing respect as well as trust, right?
Absolutely.
And therefore they're not going to go the extra mile to help you. But the other thing as well is what that's doing is that's telling them that it's okay to basically cover up your flaws, right? So what are they going to do if they do something wrong? They're not going to come out and admit, they're going to cover it up, right?
Exactly.
But you want people, this comes back to, we've talked before about failure is a learning opportunity, right? And John's book Fail Forward, and sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, all of these things, it's about learning from mistakes. And so to learn from mistakes, you have to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyways, we could talk the whole podcast episode just about this topic, but we're going to move on. Teaching point number 2 is honest and direct communication.
Yeah.
Now, Ted Lasso, really, he is a beacon of honesty and direct communication. The guy has no problem just sharing, right? And he doesn't sugarcoat things or hide behind corporate jargon, right? He speaks from the heart, and he really tells it like it is. And guess what? That again is just being authentic. Be your authentic you, and I think you relate to people a lot more effectively when you're just being you.
Right.
Unless the you's a jerk, then change that and then be a better you. But it is this straightforward approach not only fosters trust, but it also ensures that everyone's on the same page, right?
Yeah.
So remember the TED Talk scene when he gathers the team and tells them that they're not playing like a team. His honesty in this statement really cuts through the denial or any potential confusion there might be, and it lays the foundation for improvement. So as leaders, people, we should strive to communicate openly and honestly with our teams to build trust and create clarity.
Yeah. Communication is huge. And whenever if ever you're trying to highlight areas of potential opportunity improvement within an organization, if you said what's the top 3 areas, I almost guarantee that one of those 3, it could be first, second, or third, it doesn't matter, but one of those 3 will be communication
Every time, guaranteed.
right? And it baffles me, but it is. Right. So how do you communicate? And again, the best way, as it says here, is openly and honestly. All right. And encourage that back from your team, because that's the only way that you're all going to grow, right? And you encourage that idea sharing. The idea here that Ted was doing here, if they're not playing like a team, it means they're a group of individuals, but we know that a united team produces more than a group of individuals, right? We know that the sum is greater than the equal of the part, or the equal of the parts, right? It's the whole mastermind theory that Napoleon Hill came up with, that when you bring all these minds together, it creates a bigger and better mind that produces more. And the sort of well-known acronym for team is together everyone achieves more. So to do that, you've got to be open and honest with your communication so that people know where they stand, and they know that they are also able to be honest and open with their communication.
Exactly.
Right? Feedback.
Exactly. Yeah. And that builds a great company culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So on to our third teaching point, and this is lead by example. All right. Ted Lasso leads by example, and he expects the same from his team. Whether it's showing up early, working hard, or demonstrating unwavering positivity, Ted sets the bar high for himself, which inspires his team to do the same. Again, we've often quoted John Maxwell will say this, right? That people don't do what people say; they do what people see, or do what they see, right?
Yeah.
So, in other words, they're always watching you, right? And if you're saying one thing and doing another, they're going to copy what you're doing, not what you're saying. So lead by example, create the right behaviors and actions that are going to give you the results and success you're looking for. Exactly. And then your team will emulate that.
Yeah.
And one memorable example in the series is Ted's insistence on not drinking alcohol in front of his team. Right. Now, don't get me wrong, he drinks alcohol. There's scenes where he's in the pub with his assistant manager, and they're drinking beer, right? But in front of his team, he doesn't do it. He understands the importance of being a role model and maintaining a professional image.
Yeah.
Now, leaders who lead by example build trust because they show that they're committed to the same standards that they expect from others. Right? That's huge. In other words, they're not hypocrites.
Exactly. And Chris, I'm far from perfect, but just an example came to mind as we're talking about this, because at one time at one of my jobs, I had the rubber gloves on, and I was carrying around the little, basket of cleaning supplies, and I was cleaning the bathrooms. And this gentleman came in. He was a recurring customer, and so we all knew him by name, and he knew us. And he's from a different country. Yeah. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm cleaning the bathrooms." But you're the manager. And I'm like, "That's why I'm cleaning the bathroom." To me, I'm not going to ask my team to do something that that I wouldn't do myself. Right. It's not beneath me to sweep the floor, to wash the floor, to clean up a mess, to pick up the garbage, to clean bathrooms. Yeah. And I think that really goes to this point of, what Ted does in this and just leading by example.
Right.
All right. So let's move on to our fourth teaching point, active listening and empathy. So Ted Lasso, he's a great listener. He doesn't just hear his team members, he listens actively. There's a big difference between hearing and listening actively, folks. And he empathizes with their concerns. He understands that Everyone has their struggles and their insecurities, and he's there to really support them, come alongside them.
Mm-hmm.
So the episode where he helps Jamie Tart deal with father issues, Ted shows genuine empathy and compassion. He doesn't judge, he just listens and provides a safe space for Jamie to open up. So leaders who practice this active listening again and empathy, you really build trust with your team. And this creates an environment where your team not only feels valued, but also understood.
Yeah. 100% agree with it. This is huge, and you can't underestimate the value of active listening. It's it's one of the topics I cover in the Emerging Leaders program I teach at Disney, and it's something that when we ask for feedback, what is one thing that you've taken away? Almost everybody says the active listening part, and to me it's like, really? I mean, because it comes naturally to me.
Right.
But it comes naturally to me because I've practiced it for years. And
Exactly.
and it's not a natural thing, because most people listen to respond. They don't listen to understand. And if you're not sure of what I mean there, next time you're talking to someone, see if you're having a conversation, see if they're on the edge of their seat, like waiting for you to pause so they can say something. All right.
Yeah.
Or when you've finished, do they say something and they refer to something at the beginning of the beginning of what you were saying, and totally gloss over the end part? That's because they're not actively listening. They're listening to respond,
Yeah.
and they're not really so they're hearing, but they're not listening. And that is a huge difference. So.
Exactly. And something else you can do is see if you catch yourself starting to formulate your response while the other person is halfway through their sentence, just like I was doing when Chris was talking.
But it's natural, right? It is the natural thing to do,
But if
because
we're starting to think about our response, we're not really listening
correct.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we'll only pick up part of the conversation, right? And the second part could actually be vital in giving us understanding in what we thought we heard in the first part, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because again, perception is reality. We've talked about that, and it's a common statement,
Mm-hmm.
but we make our minds up on things almost instantaneously, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sit back and listen, actively listen. And another part of actively listening may be asking questions to understand as well, right?
Exactly.
And if you can do that, gosh, it's going to accelerate your leadership ability multiple fold,
Yeah, absolutely.
without a doubt.
I agree.
So let's move on to our fifth teaching point, and this is transparency in decision making. Again, sounds simple, but it's huge, because how many times have you been in in your current organization or a past organization where a decision has been made and you have got no idea why it's been made? It makes no sense whatsoever, right? My hands up, Al's hands up.
Yeah.
Hopefully, probably all of you listening, your hands are up as well.
Exactly.
And transparency is actually a cornerstone of trust building. We talk about trust a lot, in as you know. And Ted Lasso exemplifies this. He involves his team in the decision making process, whether it's choosing the team captain or discussing tactics. He values their input and keeps them informed. Now, a prime example of this is when he includes the players in selecting this team captain, as we talked about, giving them a sense of ownership and responsibility. You see, when leaders involve their teams in decisions and share the rationale behind those decisions, it fosters trust and a sense of belonging. And the thing I've experienced with this, again, when you ask for input, you will get, but the team will take responsibility and ownership because they've added input into it. And if
Right.
you explain the why and the rationale behind that decision, even if they don't agree with it, they'll probably get behind it because they understand why. Right. There are too many times when a decision has been made and nobody's told me why, and it doesn't make sense. And I struggle to get behind it with my, with integrity.
Absolutely.
So transparency in decision making is again another huge point.
And I'd like to just add something there. I know a lot of people may argue with, well, I'm the boss, I have to make the decisions, I'm responsible for the performance of the organization and stuff like that. Yes, Yes, absolutely. And there are going to be times where you may solicit the opinion and feedback of your team and still
Yeah.
have to go another direction. But here's a couple of things you need to do. You need to explain why.
Right.
Because if you don't, people are going to eventually stop coming to you with other ideas. And then you're truly, an island amongst yourself. You're going to have to be making all of those decisions and think of everything on your own. So you're losing that what Chris talked about earlier, that mastermind really alignment that you could have with your team. And I heard Tim Elmore say this, and I love it. I think it's great. Everybody has a voice, but just not an equal voice.
Right.
And I think that's a fair thing. I want to hear your feedback and opinion. Maybe you can take my idea and make it even better.
Right.
Maybe what you bring to the table could add to the idea and make it even better. But at the end of the day, I appreciate your feedback. We're going that route now. Thank you. Or I appreciate your feedback. I really do. Keep bringing me the ideas. However, this time we need to go this direction.
Yeah.
Because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But I think it comes back to that communication and transparency.
Right. A great exercise to do in that instance, exactly what you just said there, Al, is to use what I call the yes and method, right? So you may come up with an idea or an input, and what tends to happen is that somebody else, if they don't agree with it, they'll say, yeah, but it's not going to work because of this, right? Or, but I don't agree with that. It'll be the but. Replace that but with an and come up with something that you can add to that idea, right? And it may even take it in a different direction, but then that person will go, yeah, actually, yeah, that's good. And we can do this. And again, we do this exercise in Emerging Leaders, and it's a really, really popular exercise because they say it expands your thinking, and it truly does. So I definitely recommend that in decision-making process.
Really good, Chris, really good. So our last teaching point of this podcast is consistency and integrity. So Ted is consistent in his values and principles. So I'll pause right there for a moment and say, do you truly know what your values and principles are? And if you don't, you need to do a little bit of self-reflection and figure out what they are. Now, he doesn't waver in the face of challenges or adversity. And that's because he knows what his values and his principles are. So he holds true to them. And that's his kind of his compass, his North Star, so to speak. So this consistency and unwavering integrity builds trust over time because team members know what to expect from their leader. If you're working for somebody and you don't know what they're going to walk through the door in the morning, and I don't know if they're going to be in a good mood or they're going to fly off the handle. That's incredibly stressful for the team and does not build trust. So even when faced with difficulty, like Nate's betrayal, and if you haven't watched the show, you have to go watch the show. Ted remains true to his principles and forgives.
Yeah.
Now, leaders who maintain their integrity and stay consistent in their actions really earn the trust and the respect of their teams.
Yeah. Gosh, again, these 6 teaching points, we really encourage you to go back and review these again and do a self-reflection. We talked about self-perception on our Facebook group on Monday night. And if you haven't seen that teaching, gosh, what was it? About 40 minutes, I think, Al, in the end. Yeah. You can sort of reach out to us and we'll give you the link to it. But this is where we have it, folks. Our exploration of trust and transparency through the lens of Ted Lasso. So let's just quickly recap our 6 teaching points. So number 1 is be vulnerable and relatable. Number 2, be honest and direct communication. Number 3, lead by example. Number 4, active listening and empathy. Number 5, transparency and decision making. And number 6, consistency and integrity. And this really could be like a 6 series teaching, right? It could be a 6 weeks teaching with all of this thing. So we normally have an activity, and we haven't done one on this, but really what we suggest you do is go back on each of those 6 and do self-reflection on it.
Exactly.
Right? Where do you, if you were looking on a scale of 1 to 10 on each of those 6 points, with 1 being like, I'm terrible at this, and 10 being, I've got this, where would you be?
Where would you be?
Right?
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, just do that, and see where you are.
And I would say if you're under a 7 or even a 6 on any of these or lower, go to work on
Right.
improving in those areas.
Yeah.
Because it will help you and your team and your entire organization. So
Well,
Ted Lasso reminds us that building trust is really, it's a journey. It's not a destination. And it starts with being genuine, honest, transparent in how we operate as a leader.
yeah.
So as we wrap up this episode, remember, embrace these lessons and lead with the heart, just like Ted.
Yeah. So good. So I'm going to listen to this again, Al. I don't know about you, but thanks for joining us on Leading with Ted. And if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Follow us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, any of the social medias.
Right.
Don't forget to share your favorite leadership lessons from Ted Lasso with us on social media, and use the hashtag Leading with Ted. So until next time, keep leading with heart and making the world a better place, one biscuit at a time.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye for now.